Hi, my name is CJ and this is my RC channel. So I've gone ahead and attached the motor cage and axle cage onto this rear tab here. So that has, as you can see, a little bit of flex left and right and a little bit of up and down flex. So that's part of how our suspension is going to work. If you didn't see this F1 race that I'm watching right now, this is the second one in Austria, and Hamilton is in the lead solidly by almost 6 seconds. Verstappen is in second. Bottas is behind him by 6.5 seconds, and Ferrari is completely out of the game. Like in the first lap, Leclerc ran into Verstappen, and not Verstappen, anyway, he took out his teammate in a big way. So both cars are down. So now we're going to move on to step number 3. And as you can see, the F1 car builds up very, very quickly. There's only one shock absorber to build, and that's another thing that this kit has over the standard kit, or it's the original one. It has the upgraded aluminum shock body with the blue anodized caps, the blue anodized mounting hardware, and it's got the nitride shock shaft. All of those are hop-up parts, and Tamiya sells those separately. So as you can see, those are that's not the standard parts that would have come with this kit in its original form, but in the version 2 Pro model, it has these. Now, there's a couple of performance parts or upgrades you might consider. These just arrived a few minutes ago in the mail, and it's a set of front springs. This has different levels of stiffness, so you can adjust the front suspension. The front suspension is very minimal on these cars. It's basically the flex of the A-arms. The A-arms themselves don't have a true pivot and really move the way a swing arm suspension would on some other type of car. They have a pinion on the front steering knuckle, and there's a spring underneath that which allows the front suspension knuckle, the steerer with front axle, to move up and down. There's no damping, it's just spring action. Then there's another set of roll springs. These are going to be at the sides that allow the car to rock back and forth in the rear. It's a torsion between basically front axle and rear axle. And there is damping, and I can't show you that at the moment because I don't have the parts out, but these are the springs for that. The ceramic ball diffs just came in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be assembling the ball diff here in just a few minutes. I'm going to assemble it with the stock bearings, show you how smooth or not smooth the action is. Then I'm going to disassemble it before ever having run anything. So everything is going to be the same. This is going to be a level playing field. I'm going to reassemble it with the ceramic balls and see if it is noticeably smoother. And that's what we're really looking for, is a smooth diff action. This is another spring kit. Let me just go over part numbers for you from start to finish here. Our front springs is 50509. The roll springs is 54352, and these are about $6. That's one of the nice things about F1, is that for like $20 you can get all the different springs that are available. The ball diffs are this is a Tamiya race factory versus the Tamiya hop-up options. The part number is 42142. So I'm going to be leaving all of these springs and hop-up parts off for the time being, with the exception of these. I'm going to probably assemble these at this time. As I said, I'm going to do the test, but I'm probably going to leave them on. Otherwise, I'm going to build up the kit with the stock springs and run it initially, take it up to the track, see how it performs, and then when I've got all of the hop-ups in, because I've got some stuff coming from Hong Kong, that's probably going to be a couple more weeks before all of that stuff arrives, then I will take all that off and swap all the new stuff on and, you know, try some different spring rates and tell you how that works and how worthwhile it is. One of the things that I can show you right now, let me just pause a moment. This might prove to be the single most effective hop-up item, and this is the carbon rear shaft. It's part number 54162. This is the stock shaft that comes with it, and that weighs 23.61 grams, and it is hefty. I mean, it is probably the single heaviest piece on this car. Let's just weigh out the chassis for kicks. So the chassis is 115 as is, with these extra parts bolted on. And again, this is almost 24. So this is almost over a fifth of the weight of the entire assembly so far. That is a lot of rotating mass. This carbon fiber replacement piece versus 23.6 is 4.5. Okay, that's a fifth the weight of this. So, I mean, do the math. That is just I mean, you can really feel this. This feels like a pencil, and this feels like a, you know, a really expensive pen. I mean, it is heavy, and having this rotating mass off of the driveline and replaced with this little wisp of a drive shaft is going to make a huge difference in how quickly the car accelerates. I would love to have the resources to build two identical cars, exact same motor, everything, build them up identical, and just switch these two pieces and run them down a standard length straightaway a few times, you know, basically just drag race them to see the difference in acceleration. I'll bet it's pretty dramatic, because this is like, it's really hard to believe when you hold these two things that, you know, you're stuck with this initially. If you order this part from Hong Kong, like TR Racing, it's $17, maybe $15. That's not a very, you know, big increase in price, and if you consider how much money you're saving by going with the slightly less expensive car, as I discussed earlier, you know, upgrading to the carbon drive shaft is not a big expense. So again, I'll save that for the big upgrade build, and I'll have to do some, you know, timed runs at least, you know, separately, and then once this is switched out for this, run it again and see what we get. It should be quite interesting. So let me move on from here, and I'm gonna gather the parts that I need for steps 3, 4, and 4, and in step 4, I'm building up the ball diff, and as I mentioned, I'm going to do that twice, once with the regular bearings, once with the ceramics. So I'm going to find all these pieces, get them out, ready to go, and I'll pick up the video at that point. Okay, we have in one of these packs 5 grub screws, and those are going to be for items like this. items like this, and our pinion gear. So just to do a little preemptive strike, I have taken some blue Loctite, dabbed a little bit on each of them, and I'm just letting it dry, and just kind of pre-coat them a little bit. I don't want to have so much on there that they're hard to get out, but I do want to you know, make them a little tight, so that in the future when I disassemble, I don't have issues, or I don't have things falling off at the track when things get loose. So I've got most of the stuff I need here laid out already. I need these to spring, what they call a disc spring. It's these black things that are concave on one side, convex on the other. There's two of them. Those are here in the instructions. It's called a disc spring, and I was kind of at first looking for something that was more like this aluminum piece here that has a ridge milled into it. That's the differential spacer, and of course there's only one of these. But it was fairly easy to figure out what the disc springs were. So let's see, we need some bearings. Again, I'm gonna, just like with the ball diffs, I'm gonna assemble the rear axle and the differential with the standard bearings that come with this. I'm gonna show you how smooth things are. I'm gonna spin up the axle. We'll see how long it rotates, and then I'm gonna swap for the ceramic balls. And this is an interesting pack. They give you 12, only 6 are actually required, so you've got a whole second set. And I think these were like a $6 or $8 purchase to get those ceramic bearings. These were considerably more expensive, but I think they will be worth it. So again, let's see, we need 2 of these. And this kit doesn't have a lot of bearings. Ceramic bearings on a Formula-1 is kind of a luxury to a certain degree. I mean, it can pay off, definitely, especially when you do things on top of it, like replace this, axle with the carbon axle. If they even give you a 5% increase in friction reduction, and you combine that with a much lighter axle and a few other things, that can really, increase the overall potential. It's kind of like a multiplier. So then we need 2 of, is that the right size? No, we need 1, and that would be this bearing right here, this big sucker. So when you think about it, there's only so many bearings back here. You've got 1 on either side of the axle, and you've got a big bearing inside the ball diff. And then there's also these other 2 bearings, so that's 5 bearings altogether for the rear. Now, if we were talking about a, let's just say a 4-wheel drive pan car, okay? You're gonna have at least 2 bearings in the differential. You're gonna have 4 bearings, 2 on either side at the ends of the out drives. So that's 6 right there. You're gonna have the same in the front. You're gonna have at least 1, if not 2, on the pinion coming out of the diff to a central drive shaft, or multiples for pulleys. So you could have anywhere from 4 to 6 on the central drivetrain, depending on whether it's a shaft drive or belt drive. So we've got, let's see, 6, that's 12, plus 4, so 16, 18. So you get 18 bearings maybe. That's when ceramic bearings really pay off, is when you've got, a much more complex drivetrain. There definitely will pay off on this, and you're going to have, 4 at the front wheels. Each wheel has 2 ball bearings. So This kit is going to have, let's see, 5 plus another 4 is 9 bearings. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yep, 9 bearings. So, you know, that's half or less of what you would have on an all-wheel drive pan car. So, which also makes this not that expensive. I think this was in the $30 range. You know, a kit like the all-wheel drive Euro truck, the Euro truck kit itself is $149. The ceramic ball bearing kit is $71.99, $72. So it's half the cost of the entire chassis, body, wheels, tires, motor, ESC package that is that Tamiya truck. So does it pay off? Well, to tell you the truth, I have a second Euro truck that I'm building, and I'm building it with the ceramic bearings, and I'm going to test one against the other, and we're going to see whether the ceramic bearings really are a benefit or are worth the money. In this bag, we're going to have this piece. This is the S tree, and these are our axle locators, and we have 3 pairs, and that gives us 5 different axle positions. So these go into those cutaways that you saw earlier here and on the other side. So this, depending on whether it's upside down or right side up, is our lowest or highest position. This is our mid low or mid high position, and this is our center position. And they recommend that we start with the ones that are marked number 1, which is the mid position, and they have it for mid high. In other words, you'll have this little crescent shape pointing upwards. Excuse me, downwards. And these you should trim all of them off and start a parts box for this car, because if you know, there's going to be other parts that you're going to have multiples on. If you get extra springs, things like that. One of the things I do is almost any time I pick up a new car, I get at least 1 or more parts boxes. So this is going to be the new parts box for this particular car. And this is basically a fishing tackle box you can get from Amazon for about $6 or $7. You can pull out some of the dividers, so the larger pieces, if you need, you can set up an area like that. Small pieces like these will just go in a single compartment. And as long as you're assembling, you might as well do this process. And that way you know where things are down the road. So when you're at the track and you want to try adjusting the handling because it's oversteering or understeering, you know where to find these, because raising and lowering the axle is a very good go-to item to see if to change handling in a fairly benign way that doesn't have a lot of effect on other things, because it's just a slight change, so it's not going to have a big effect on front caster and things like that. And these are the pair that we're going to put in. And then this just gets tossed. Now, because these fit into a cutaway here, it is a good idea to take a little bit of sandpaper. This is some 800 grit. It's really fine sandpaper, and just smooth out that little spot where we just cut these off the tree. Make sure there's no flashing material there. that might make them not slide in properly. That way when you are, you know, out at the track and you want to replace these or switch a set out, you know they're going to fit. You've already done this. You don't have to worry about it. You don't have to go around asking people for some sandpaper or borrow somebody's Dremel or get out an X-Acto knife and try to trim it away. I mean, the cutters I'm using do a really good job already, but it never hurts to just make sure that you've gotten all that material off when it's a part like this that has to fit like a glove inside of another part. Okay, so parts box is started. Set this aside. And we are ready to go on these. So, let's see, which ones are these using? I think they take these two bearings here. That's these. Because, again, the axle is going to pass through these. And remember, the crescent faces down, so we just snap those in. And our rear bearing housing is in place. Now, there is another hop-up that is an interesting item. I did order one. What it is a counterweight for the differential. As you notice, you know, on one side we don't have very much going on. On the other side, we're going to have this big piece. We're going to have this piece, or excuse me, this is for the other side. We're going to have this piece here. We're going to have this. We're going to have these two. We're going to have some of these. We're going to have the we're going to have all the bearings. We're going to have a big plastic gear. So as you can see, we've got a lot of stuff off one side here of the axle that makes up that ball diff and drive gear assembly. The other side doesn't have any of that extra weight. So there is an item you can get to hop up, and it includes a couple of ball bearings. It's probably going to replace this spacer, and it's designed to be a counterweight to this extra hardware on the other side. I can't recall the price offhand. I think that it was around $8, but it might have been $16. I can't remember. I looked at so many different parts. So anyway, that is something you might consider. So step one. Let's see. Okay. This drive goes on this side, and we've got our bearing in place already. And the long, okay, now there's two ends to this. There's a cutaway here and here for locking a grub screw in place. They're different lengths from the end. See, this one is further away. This one goes on this side with this piece here. So we're going to go ahead and get our first grub screw. And we're going to get it started. And I'm just going to make sure I've got that little flat spot pointed in the right direction, holding it with my finger and tightening the grub screw down onto it. Now be careful not to tighten these too tight. You don't want to strip out this piece here. You don't want to strip out the Allen head, and that is also possible. Some people will tell you that you can't strip Allen heads. Oh yeah, you can. The wrenches are built with a certain amount of tolerance, otherwise you wouldn't be able to stick the wrench into the Allen head in the first place. The grub screw and other hardware all have a certain amount of tolerance as well, and if you exceed what that tolerance will allow, you can round out an Allen head, and then you're never getting it out. You've just thrown away an axle and this part as well. I mean, you could potentially drill it out and retrieve the axle. If you've got the carbon axle in there, forget it, it's done. Yeah. Okay, on goes our spacer, and then this piece is going to go on here. So we get our next grub screw. I'm going to go ahead and start it. Make sure I'm not going down too far. And face the slot up. I'm going to hold this firmly. So I've got my fingers over here, and I'm going to hold firmly with my thumb here, squeezing these together, because you don't want this to be loose, because these are riding on bearings. So you don't want this to have any jiggle, and as you can see, it does not. I cannot move it at all, but we got a nice smooth action there. There's nothing rubbing. Everything is as it should be. So now it is time for step 4. We have to assemble the ball diff. So that is going to start with this piece right here. And it's interesting. Ah, I see why they're doing that. You slide it like this. It fits over this this nut here that's machined into this shaft, and there's a slot here that gives you access to that grub screw that we just tightened a moment ago. So if you need to pull the axle off and not, you know, basically take the whole diff assembly with you, you can do that by accessing the grub screw through that hole there. So let's see, we need our diffs. I'm going to pause for a minute and just kind of review this. I want to put these somewhere safe and move this out of the way. I need to make sure I'm using the right gear for the motor that I'm using, and pick back up in just a moment. Okay, I'm getting ready to begin assembling the ball diff. They gave us a couple extra ball bearings as well with this kit. Looks like there are 8, and we only need 6. I'm going to be using the 104 tooth rear spur, or excuse me, the rear, yeah, spur gear, excuse me. And they recommend using their Diff Grease. I've got Diff Grease by several different manufacturers, all of whom say only use my Diff Grease on my ball diff. It doesn't matter. Use whatever Diff Grease you have that you trust. They include the ball diff grease with this, so I am going to use Tamiya's grease, no problem. Here are the 2 of the 3 bearings. The 3rd bearing that we need, I've already slid onto the rear shaft here. That basically just slides onto there. And the other one is going to press into here, and this is going to go inside here later. Now you'll see I've laid this cloth down, and you might go, oh, you know, dust, whatever. This is a microfiber towel. They are, you know, designed to be dust-free, lint-free towels. You can get them at a auto parts store like Advanced, or any of the big box auto stores will have them. Another good one to get is the there's a microfiber cloth for cleaning windshields that is an even finer weave, and the idea is that when you're dealing with things like loose ball bearings, you don't want them to roll off on you. If you're working on a pit board like I am here at the moment, that sucker's gonna just roll right to an edge and disappear. And even with the pit mat that I'm using, which is basically a yoga mat, it's a textured rubber. Yoga mats are great. You can cut them into, you know, 3-4 different pit mats out of a single yoga mat that costs $4 at like Target or Walmart. But laying down a microfiber towel, you know, if you drop a ball bearing, if it slips out of your fingers, it's not going to go far. It's just going to roll a little bit and stop. It's always build your diffs on a towel and get yourself some microfiber towels. They're good for cleaning your cars. They're good for all kinds of stuff. It's worth having, and they're cheap. So I'm going to pause for a minute and back in a second. Okay, on with the diff. Now, I had slid a bearing on here and then slid one into this gear. That's incorrect. You press one in here, and then this is going to go directly against there with a diff ring in place. The other bearing goes in here, and then the third bearing is going to go into here. And the easiest way to press that in is just use a wrench. Okay, so now that those two are in there, we need to put our ball, Jesus, that sounds horrible. We need to put the diff balls into the spur gear. And we only need 6 of them, so I'm going to pull one out. And just put the 2 back in the bag for later. So, put a little bit of grease into each of the holes on the spur gear, because we want the bearings to stay in place while we're assembling this. Okay, I'm just gonna set that aside for a moment. That bearing just dropped out of there. It doesn't fit in terribly tight. So now I'm going to take one of these diff rings and just put a little bit on it and lube up both sides. Now, even though this is going to go metal on metal, it's still good to have that grease on there because it's going to get locked in place. The grease just helps hold it on while you're putting things together. So now we can take the diff balls one at a time and just gently press them into the grease with your fingernail. There's a little resistance and then they slide right in. Okay, then I can just take this grease from there, just kind of wipe it around the edge, and I can use that to lube this ring. Once again, you just need a light coating on here. Okay, now you take your gear and you're going to put it with the open side of the bearing facing in and this side facing out. And it's probably easier to do this all together. Go ahead and slide your bearing back into here. Put this on here like that. Go ahead and give it a rotate back and forth. Smear the grease around a little bit on the ring. And then we just slide this assembly in place. Go ahead and spin that a couple times just to make sure the grease is covering the diff rings and the bearings thoroughly. Now we can drop that into place. Just slide that down so it's all the way in place there. Okay, so now we have the two spring what do they exactly call them? Disc springs, and they need to be the convex side facing down on the first one. So we're gonna drop that in, and then this one, the convex side facing up. So the two cups are facing each other. And then last, we put in this piece with the Reese facing up. And then our bolt. And the easiest way to do the bolt, because you can't get your fingers in there, I certainly can't, pick it up with the wrench. And then go ahead and get it started. Now you notice how I've got my index finger of my left hand is holding the diff together. At this point you need to be holding the other end of the axle, so tip this up so nothing down line there separates. And then tighten this down. So, according to the instructions, as far as tightening the differential, fully tighten the lock nut, then loosen by a quarter turn. Okay, so I'm just gonna hold on to the end here with the cloth since I don't have a wrench handy, and tighten it down, and then back off a quarter turn. And so now we have our differential action there. And it's not very smooth. It's a little grainy. I'm going to try loosening it a little bit more. You don't want to loosen it too much or you get slippage. I just did it like a 1/16 of a turn there. There, that's better. It's definitely smoother than it was a moment ago. Might even do it a little less. Just like a couple degrees. Okay, so if you hold the gear and rotate one end of the axle, you should get a counter rotation. In other words, if I rotate clockwise here, I get counterclockwise out here. That's your differential action. And that's pretty smooth. I mean, you can, it's not like butter, but it's pretty smooth. So again, we're going to test this with the ceramic bearings in a few minutes. So now this end piece, this is going to allow us to bolt on our wheel. And how does that attach? I'm assuming it's just a pin. Let me flip to the next page. Okay, so one side we screw in a grub screw and the other we slide a pin through. Okay, so I think that's the, okay. Okay, so here's what we got to do. We need to take one of our grub screws and you'll notice that there are 3 holes. There's 2 small smooth holes and then a threaded hole for our grub screw. And the grub screw is going to go down through here, and when we slide a pin through, we're going to tighten the grub screw onto that pin and anchor that pin in place. So just back off the grub screw a little bit. And then again, we have 3 holes here, 2 large smooth ones and a small one. This is big enough for us to get our wrench in place. So we put the grub screw facing up, and that's going to lock in there. Well, actually, it will rotate on you. That's why the pin's necessary. Here's our pin. So it's in that same bag with the other blue parts. Slide the blue pin in so it is through to both sides and not sticking out either side. So just hold it with your fingers from both ends. And then we're going to tighten the grub screw down until it touches that pin, and then give it a little bit of a tightening. You don't want to tighten it too much, because if you bend that pin, you're not going to be able to get it back out again. And anytime we want to be able to service our differential, we need to be able to get that pin out. So over tightening that would be really bad. So we now have our complete assembly here. It's weird that this gear seems to have a bit of a wobble in it. It makes me wonder if one of the diff discs is not fully seated. I'm going to go ahead and pull this out. Push that pin through, pull this out. Now, the discs were both seated. Maybe this gear has a bit of a warp in it, or one of these discs may have a high spot in it. Yeah, everything is seated correctly. Put our little, oops, gotta get that out. That's got to be cup side down, and this goes in. Tighten that down, back it off a quarter turn. There we have our diff action. And our gear still has a wobble in it. That's got to be the plastic gear not being molded properly. Tighten it down a little more. Yeah, that must be the issue there, because everything else is snug, and you know, we've got our diff action going there. So either the Most likely it's the plastic gear that's just not molded perfectly. There are aftermarket gears available, and I think Tamiya has some quote-unquote hop-up parts gears. See how easy that was to disassemble and reassemble again? So, okay, now what I'm going to do, so we have a little momentum, is I'm going to put on a set of rear tires so we can kind of do a spin test on those bearings. Save that grease. Okay. Let's see. Something to prop this up on. So let me get a timer on that. Get my iPhone clock open here. Timer. So I'm gonna spin it and tap start. Wait a second. Stopwatch. That's what I want. So I'm going to do this as quickly as I can. So 5 seconds, 5.79 seconds. Let's do a reset. Wait till it stops. 6.10. Do this a couple times. 5.47. So that's our kind of range between 5.5 and 6 seconds. So I'm going to go ahead and pause recording on this. I'm going to disassemble the diff here, and I'm going to put in the ceramic balls and reassemble it, and we'll see how that makes an impact. Because just, you know, again, we've got a pretty smooth action here. We do have that gear being out of line. Maybe there's a bearing that's larger than some of the others. I don't know what's going on there. I would almost guarantee it's the plastic not being molded correctly. In any event, I'm going to take off this wheel, open the diff, change the bearings, and we'll see what we got. And then I'll do the bearings in the axle with the fast eddy bearings, and then we'll do a spin test on that. There's no way to really test the diff other than just by feel. So you're kind of going to have to, you know, trust my opinion of whether the diff is smooth or not. But that's all we got. Okay, in answer to, are ceramic bearings better? I'm blown away by these ceramic diff balls. I was thinking, you know, should I bag these up and say, you know, these are the old steel ones here. Should I bag these up and save them for later? They're going in the trash. I will never use, you know, out of the box steel diff balls again if I can get a ceramic option. I mean, this diff is just like buttery smooth, and I'm at least 1/8 of a turn tighter on the adjustment. And that's one of the nice things that I see as a big benefit of the ceramic diff balls, is that you're going to be able to make fine adjustments to this differential to control, you know, how much of a locker it is, how loose it is, and, you know, be able to just fine tune it by a couple of degrees of tightening or loosening on the inner bolt there. So all you got to do is loosen that grub screw, pull the pin. Also, remember that there's going to be a wheel that's going to fit over this hex. So you really just tighten that grub screw down enough to touch the pin and, you know, make contact, and then maybe a couple degrees of a turn just to snug on it. You don't need to tighten it down. You just need to keep it from dropping out on you when you're switching wheels or making adjustments. Because once a wheel is over this hex here, there's no way for that pin to escape anyway. And I cannot tell you how different this diff feels compared to what it was like with the stock 3mm diff balls. These ceramics are incredible. So let me bolt on these wheels and let's do a spin test on the axle. Remember, the axle, we're only testing 2 bearings out of 2 bearings, so it may not be as dramatic as the difference that the ball diff makes, and those are also ceramic bearings by different companies. But I think we're going to see a difference for sure. How big that difference is, we'll find out. But, you know, I've also got ceramic bearings inside the diff assembly and the diff housing, and that also is probably contributing to that buttery smooth differential. It's just amazing. I mean, it's night and day. It's not even close. It's, you know, if you had the choice of running one or the other, it's like, oh my God, you know, what do I need to pay to get this set up versus the, you know, the quality of bearings that come with it. And I'm sure they're decent bearings. I'm sure if you built this up with the stock ball, ball bearings for the diff and the stock sealed bearings, you're going to have a nice running car. You know, the diff may not be as smooth as it is on this, and it may not be quite as adjustable, but you're going to have a good ride. But if you can afford to get a pack of these and then get either the Fast Eddie setup or someone else's ceramic bearing set, you know, I would definitely do it. And again, you know, there's that difference of if I bought an X-Ray or a Serpent or even the high-end Tamiya, the 103 Pro or whatever that's got all the extra carbon fiber, I wouldn't have the money to necessarily to spend on the carbon fiber balls. And I would, God, in any event, I would almost be willing to bet that this car built with the ceramic ball bearings in the diff and the sealed ceramics everywhere else versus, let's say, a Serpent or an X-Ray with standard bearings, I'll bet you get better performance out of this. If they were using the same motor, speed controller, battery, all that other stuff being equal, the difference in, you know, the amount of development in the higher end car's chassis would pale in comparison to the difference that these ball bearings make in the overall feel, and then in the speed of the vehicle is going to be a factor. Absolutely. So let's see let's do the spin test here. Repeat what I did a little bit ago with the stopwatch, and let's see what happens. So again, I'm just gonna spin the axle, tap start, wait till it stops, tap stop. Oops, didn't get that in time. What is that? I do not know how I got this thing going. Oh, I see. There we go. Let's try this again. Oh. And I'm doing timer now. Okay, again. So 435, it's actually slower, or it gets less revolutions. Again, slower or less revolutions. Huh. One more time. Again, about 4 seconds. So slower, or excuse me, less revolutions. Now that could be because the grease is thicker. That doesn't mean it's going to translate to speed. You know, it's not an empirical test. It was just something to show you. But again, the way the differential works versus the way it did with the stock bearings, it's not even a comparison. I mean, especially with a set of tires on here, you know, I'm just holding this gear and the rotation is just so easy and fluid and smooth. What I'd really love to do is find a replacement gear that has more than just 6 diff balls, because that's not a lot, really. A lot of the kits I've had, like off-road truck, like a TLR, short course truck, in the ball diff, it's actually a smaller overall diff space. The balls are slightly smaller, and the there's like 12 of them, or at least 10. So it might even have been more than 12, like it might have been like 14 or 15. In any event, a lot more ball bearings for that same size rotating surface, and it's actually larger. Those diff rings are bigger than the diff rings on that TLR's diff. So I'd love to find a gear that will fit in here that has more sockets for differential balls, and that will make this gear a lot more stable, because that's one of the reasons that you can see the gear kind of seems to wobble. It's because it's moving around on the balls themselves. The ceramic diff balls are clamped in between those 2 rings. The gear is moving back and forth and moving around on the ball bearings itself. It's just sliding in free space there. So with a better quality gear and more diff balls in place there, that wobble wouldn't be there. And I have a feeling that once there's a motor on here and it's running this at speed, that bit of wobble is gonna kind of true out all on its own. It'll find its own center as it ramps up to speed. You see how it's really pronounced right now, and depending on how I adjust it, I can kind of get it to be more or less centered. See, you can just push it offline because it's just floating there on its ball bearing, and on you know, it's being held in place by the ball bearings. It's hard to describe, but if you understand how this action works here, you know what I'm talking about. And you know, again, it's phenomenal. It's like I just want to sit here and like just feel how smooth that is. It's amazing. It's liquid. It doesn't feel like it's a mechanical thing, you know. It doesn't have any grind or you don't even feel the ball bearings rotating the way you do with a steel bearing. Okay, so time to mount the motor. I'm going to go ahead and save the mounting up the motor for later on. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the front end construction because that motor adds a lot of weight to the chassis, and I'm going to be like spinning this around, and the next step after mounting the motor is doing front suspension. I'd rather do that work up here without, you know, the big motor in the back, because I'm going to be like you know, putting in screws from below, and it'll just be easier without the weight there. So I'm gonna skip past that and do that later on. I'll definitely show it to you. I'm just not gonna do it right now. Okay, so I'm gonna cut out the various parts that I need from the parts trees, get the hardware that I need. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please click like and please subscribe to my channel.